Welcome to Marathon Champions, the podcast where running legends Benji Durden, Bill Rogers, and Ron Tabb share their timeless wisdom on marathon training and inspire listeners with their wealth of experience. These champions continue to impact the running world today.
Okay. Hello, Bill. Hello, Rod. Hello, Benji. Hello.
Hello, Rod.
How you doing, Rod?
So today we're talking to Rod Dixon, who's a Renaissance man of running. So you've got this
in my own mind.
Well, I mean, in our minds too. I mean, you've got a range from 800 to the marathon. I mean, you're just insanely talented.
Oh, I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do.
Well, that's all right. You were able to do them all well.
Yeah, that's it.
I want to be like Bill Rogers.
We all want to be Bill Rogers.
Well, Rod, my 800-meter PR on the track is too flat.
Whoa.
Too flat.
How did you get too flat?
That was my PR in college, and I never ran the 800 after that, you know.
I'm sure you could run a faster 800 than too flat back in the day.
Yeah. Not too good. Ron, we were all talking about how more than maybe any runner, you know, I think Benji and Ron came up. You had this diversity of ability where you covered everything because you ultimately moved up to the marathon, and not only your New York win over some pretty darn good marathoners, but also your Olympic race in LA was a hell of a race. And so do you think it's New Zealand, you know, the mountains, the history of marathoning there and distance running as well?
I think, you know, we started off, well, of course it started off at school really, wasn't it? When the teacher used to send me out for a run around the football field because I was disturbing others. You know, that we didn't know what ADD was in those days, but he knew that we'd just get him out and go for a run and come back and he'll settle down. And but you know, my brother, of course, 3 years older, he joined the running club, and I wasn't allowed. You weren't allowed to join a running club till you're 12 years old. So on my 12th birthday, July, I joined the running club, and suddenly I realized that this is what I mean. I played cricket, but I got knocked out because I was rugby. I got squashed a couple of times. I played soccer, but of course they put me on the wing, and I was I never got the ball because, you know, the kids are on the side of the field. So, but running was the thing, you know, the whistle went and you ran as fast as you could and you finished, and that was good. I loved that. I mean, I wasn't the best kid, but I was out there with my friends and we're running around, and yeah, and so that's really how it all started.
So did you have a good coach and all that? Is that part of it? I mean,
well, actually, you see, now with the running club, Harold Nelson was a 1948 Olympian, and 1950 he won the gold medal in the 6 mile and the silver medal in the 3 mile at the British Empire Games, and of course, and Terry Williams was our the athletic director at Nelson Boys College, and he was a 4-time New Zealand and 2-time Australian cross-country champion. So those were our influence. And then, of course, later on, a guy called George McKenzie, who was the club captain. And George was the brother of Dave McKenzie, the only New Zealander to win the Boston Marathon.
Yeah. I remember that name. So, and did you know Lydiard pretty good?
Oh, yes.
You did.
You know, what was incredible is that after Lydiard worked for Rothmans with the tobacco company here in Nelson, and so he used to come to you know, to be as part of his job was to come to the corporate office in Motueka, and of course he would go for a run and with the running club. And so we would all run along with him. But, you know, we were only 12, 13, 14, 15. So we weren't allowed to do the 10 mile, but we were allowed to do 5 miles. And then, of course, he would have a coach's clinic, and we would all sit in on the coach's clinic. But we were a bit young to understand all that. But of course, my brother and George Mackenzie and Harold Nelson were all part of that. So it was incredible, an incredible journey as far as inspiration and and the club. Our running club in those days had about 300 members, and the running club was formed in 1896. So it was quite an incredible inspiration with all those people. And every weekend you'd run somewhere at the beach or cross country around the race course, or we'd go to somebody's farm and they would have a big barbecue after the run. So it was every weekend was a run somewhere.
So you were kind of following the English model. It was a little different than the collegiate system of America, but
Yes.
it was a club system.
Yes, very much a club system. We had no university programs at all.
Were
No.
you in Auckland or where were you
No,
at?
no, Nelson, which is the top of the South Island.
Okay, okay. I met a New Zealand couple, my partner Karen and I, 3 weeks ago, and the husband was a cyclist and got hit by a car and got knocked down, and he and I had met at New York City Marathon years ago, and they did a swing over to London, then they came over to Boston and everything. Um, but just, the Kiwi connection, and but I remember our races, Ron, and I don't know Benji and Ron if you ever raced Rod on the roads, but Rod and I had a few duels. Remember Beverly Hills 10K? That was a great race.
That was, wasn't it? The Beverly Hills. And I remember we were into the last 2 miles, so we'd already run 4 miles, and we came around the corner, and I said, "There's a waiter up front running along with a tray and a champagne bottle on it," and it was Roger Bourbon,
Yeah.
and he was already at the 4 mile mark, and they had only started 3 minutes ahead of us. And I said to Roger, I said, of course, we're still amazing friends, but yeah, typical in Beverly Hills, right?
Yeah.
The waiters race had about 30 of them all running along the road with their champagne on their tray, because they had to have it scotch taped in case it dropped off.
Yeah.
But it would always had to be full. Oh, I was just pretty amazed by that.
Rod, to be honest, I think Benji and Ron and I would agree, and I wonder what your thought is. I think we had the ultimate in road racing in
Yes,
those days
yes.
because you can't really surpass them. Times could come down a little, the shoes play a huge role and all that. But I think it was just this brilliant era, a
I think it
brilliant
was a lot more
time.
fun than they're having today.
I think yes, fun. That's the key word, Benji. It was fun, and I mean we didn't do a lot of talking before the race, but certainly afterwards we'd all go for a jog off and maybe have a beer or
The after
coffee or
parties.
something. Yeah.
Okay, so Rod, speaking of beer, so I posted something here a little bit ago. If someone had an opportunity to ask you a question, what would they ask you? And one of the responses was they'd like to know what kind of beer you liked drinking.
Oh, well, always German beer, Hefeweizen,
Okay.
my best. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I
I wish
remember.
I had known that before 83. I would have adapted to that. Maybe I would have been a little bit closer.
No, I tell you, when we lined up and I looked all around and I thought, okay, those guys are gone. And I looked around and you were there and I said, no, this is where you've got to be with the Ron Tabs of this world.
So I remember we were on the same bus going over to the starting line, and Dick was on the bus also. And I looked around and going, "My God, I can't believe that this field that they've assembled, and that what's this thing going to shape up like?" So yeah, for me, it was a great honor to be in races with you and Benji and Bill. It was nothing I ever expected to be.
Well, no, Ron, it was an incredible journey. And I think, because of the 1980 boycott, and of course I'd been through 72 Olympics with the Israeli massacre, 76 was the boycott, and I haven't talked a lot about it, but I am a bit more now we were threatened by the Supreme Council of South Africa, of Africa, not South Africa, the Supreme Council, and they said, if you don't stop your government and the All Blacks competing, playing rugby in South Africa, we will do something. And Craxy got food poisoning for his 10,000 meters, and they got me for the 5,000 meters. The night before, I woke up and I was in the toilet for at least a couple of hours, throwing up and very, 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 very sick.
Wow. Yeah. We were talking about the 80 boycott just before you came on, and you were very outspoken, and that was kind of what started your U.S. running career after the 80 boycott there, because you guys were denied the opportunity to compete in Moscow as well.
Yes.
Was that a big influence in your decision to come to the U.S.?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd been through, in the amateur days, when we were in Europe or Scandinavia in the 70s, and in the New Zealand. In those days, it was called the New Zealand Amateur Athletic Association, and they would ask the British managers to keep an eye on Walker, Dixon, and Quacks, to make sure that they're not going to the paymaster's office and getting paid. And I would often say the real race wasn't on the track; it was from the finish line to the paymaster's office underneath the stand, because sometimes you go there and there'd be about 20 people lined up, and you'd miss out on a pizza and a beer later on.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to witness that with Mary. She would be in the
Yes.
line to, Swen Arnie and let's see, it was Swen Arnie. Who was the other
Annie
Norwegian?
Halkvik,
Arnie, yeah.
Bertel Thompson.
Yep.
And then of course, fortunately, we were able to. Andy Norman came along like mid 70, and we got to a point where he would take care of things. But it was just interesting that it was always, when we came back to New Zealand, we would always be asked to go down to Wellington to meetings with the NZ3As, and they would basically have a investigation on where we'd been, what we'd done, how could we travel around Europe and not get paid. It was I just had it by 1980. I'd had enough of all that, and I talked to a lot of the US guys, and I said, no, this is where I certainly. Of course, we were training in Pennsylvania with Ron Stanko for the Jumbo Elliott meet. That's when the boycott really came on for New Zealand. And Ron said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "No, I'm not going onto Europe. I'm not going to go onto Europe and sit there, race all these guys, and then I have to watch them go to the Olympics." So Ron said, "Well, there's a Pepsi race on in Philadelphia," and I went to that, and Bill Rogers was there.
And Rod, I remember the night before, I think that was a race, we went out to get a bite to eat and maybe a beer. And I think we were talking there till like 3 a.m. We got up at 6 to go to the race, and a young man from Pennsylvania, from Philadelphia, with the last name of Finelli,
Yes.
who's kind of an interesting dude, but a serious runner, and he beat us both.
Yes. Yep.
He remembers that one frequently.
Yeah.
Very
That was, and I thought, because I remember I still had my training shoes those days. I didn't have racing flats, and I sort of looked at all you guys with your Onitsuka Tigers and all that sort of thing, and so of course Ron said, and Adidas said to me, they weren't prepared to support me road racing, that I had to go back to Europe. And so Ron said, "Well, look, we'll go down to Brooks, down in Hanover, Pennsylvania." We went down there, and they they were already working with John Walker, and they said, "No, we'll be interested in doing something with you." And I said, "Can you pay me a contract?" And they said, "No, we'll pay you each time you finish first, second, or third, and then we'll give you a list of all the races that we will give you the bonus for." And so I had to sit down with Ron and plan to run those races.
What a different experience, that the money was coming in. But, I think we all recognize this is just common sense. The numbers of people who are out there, tracks always been popular, As Marty LaCoria says, track and field is opera and road racing is rock and roll.
Well, it's
He was
Carnegie
right.
Hall. Track is Carnegie Hall and road racing is rock and roll.
There
Yeah.
you go. But we all recognize that, and it was exciting to see the running boom was on.
Oh,
Yep.
yes.
Pink Shorter's gold medal in the Olympic
Yes.
marathon in Munich changed everything. And,
Yeah.
and the US kind of started to really push. And runners came out, and Fred Lebow, this young Romanian fellow who falls in love with the marathon, brought you in.
Yeah.
And our sport's never stopped since. It's
Yeah.
getting better and better, I think, in most ways, but not always.
Yeah. But the participation is certainly there.
Yes.
It's incredible. I'm working, obviously, with my foundation to get more charity entries in the World 8 marathons, and but of course, and we've got New Zealanders and Australians who, are lining up to travel around the world to run a marathon. Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. And what we're finding here too in New Zealand is the trail running. So the trail runnings, and Nelson has got 3 national parks. So Julian Matthews, who is the Olympian, 2004 Olympian, and they've got a program going here, and it gets sold out, completely oversold every year. And interesting, the 50K trail run, 64% of the runners are now women. So it's pretty amazing how it's
So
all
that's
evolved.
So the money side of our sport and us finally getting to control our lives without having someone from another continent way far away trying to control us came to being in the role, the Kiwi women, of course, like Ann O'Dane, Lorraine Moeller, and
Yes.
they played a huge role as well. But I think
Yep.
that's half the population wasn't there before, Rod.
Yes.
And I think all of us guy runners all wanted that to change. We
Right.
wanted it to change because it's only common sense. And you started something that which was really it's kind of took me by surprise a little bit initially. The kids running a marathon. I thought, what is Rod doing? Is he off his rocker? What is he doing?
What was fascinating for me was that uh, when we suggested the kids, well, we started off with the kids. It was called the Rod Dixon's Family 5K and 10, oh no, 2K and 5K Fun Run. And we
Okay.
raised, and that was 1990, to raise awareness in the community and to save the school, because they were going to close the school down, and they were going to bus the kids for half an hour to Warkworth. And I said, all these kids, because this is in the country, all these kids come to school in bare feet. They run around the field all day. It's just, they love it. Now you're going to put them in a bus for half an hour to go to a school, and they've got to wear shoes all day. I said, wish, and the Lale Haddon, who's the Maori chief, he said, why don't we do a fundraiser? And we said, yes, let's do the fundraising, and we'll have a fun run for the kids. So I went all around about 30-mile radius and got all the kids into training. And then, because I knew that if you get the kids involved, that, because if you say to the parents, oh, we've got this run on with it, the parents say, oh, we've got things to do. We've got something to do. Whereas if you go to the kids, get the kids training, get the kids active, and get the kids involved, they will tell their parents, you are taking me to the Lee School for the fun run this weekend. And the parents would do it. So we knew to get the kids involved, to get the kids inspired.
So
And
you
so that's
did
how it all started. And then some of the kids said that so these are elementary, primary kids, and they said that their father does running, and that they go out for a run for 1 or 2 miles each week with them. And over the course of 10 weeks, we run close to a marathon. And that's what gave me the idea that, hold on, if we get the kids to do this in school, and then they come to do their final mile at the stadium or at a track event, and that's how it all really kind of started.
But Rod,
So
you went to LA and you started it there. That was the big
Yes.
deal, the LA
Yes, and
Marathon.
Bill, you were there for the first one in 2006 when we held that with the LA Marathon, and you and Lorraine Moller were both together for the very first one we had for the Los Angeles Unified School District. I'd done it in New Zealand, but that was the first one, and I still got the photographs of you and I and Lorraine and Bill Burke, the president of the
yeah.
LA Marathon. Sadly, Bill passed away 2 weeks ago. I don't know whether you know about that.
I did hear about it.
Yeah. One of your Facebook fans, he wanted to know how much time do the schools allow for this type of training?
Well, it's actually interesting because what I've found is that the schools now have moved it more towards class by class. And so what will happen is that and I get the teachers to give great feedback. They say that if the kids are a little bit restless and that, she'll stand them up and send them out, run 2 or 3 times around the football field and then come back and sit down, because kids were not born to sit down and keep quiet. Let them move, and then their expression and their enthusiasm and their desire to focus comes if they're able to get out and move. Now, in my day, we had morning recess, we had an hour for lunch, afternoon after recess, and then after school activity. Whereas a lot of schools don't have that now. The kids don't have that time. So the teachers that are doing the kids marathon are sending them out during the day, and they're finding they're getting a lot better attention and learning skills.
But Rod, these kids, they're going to build up to do the full marathon. I'm assuming they were doing Jeff Galloway. You're doing run walk. You got to do run walk.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the kids do and that's what I get them to do. But I always have a whistle around my neck. I mean, if I go to the school and I go, now, when you hear the whistle, you need to stop because I've got something to say. And of course, I'll go out and most schools have a football field, so the kids run around the football, and they know that that's around
400 meters.
On the average it's 350 to 400 meters, and so the kids know to do 3 or 4 laps. And so what will happen is when they go out to do their run, of course, all the kids they take off, and you've got all these kids that want to win. And so as they come around the field, I blow the whistle and say, now stop. I've got something to say. Turn around and go the other way. And suddenly these kids that were trying to be the winners are now last. And off they go, and they try and catch up again. And I tell you, I do it 2 or 3 times, and they give up trying to be the winner. Mm-hmm. And they all start running together. And I go, well, if you're running together, why don't you high five? Why don't you go sideways? Go do some turns. Mm-hmm. And Mondays, Wednesdays, they go clockwise. Tuesdays and Thursdays, counterclockwise. So, and of course, I'm finding too that the best kids, the best coaches are the soccer coach and the basketball coach. Mm-hmm. And they will come to me and they'll say, we love the program, Rod Dixon, because all the kids that play basketball or soccer, all our kids those kids will score all the goals in the last quarter. And I say, you know why I love you, coach? Is because you teach the kids the importance of left foot and right foot for soccer, and left hand and right hand for basketball. And so they're teaching those kids skills. And it's just amazing that when we do some where we have the cones and the kids have to zigzag down the cones on the right and then come back on the left. And then they get the basketball with their right hand and go down and then come back on the other side with their basketball on the left hand. And then they have to kick the soccer ball down on the right foot and down on the left foot. And the kids who are the best are the lefties because they are adapted. And so what is amazing is that you go back to that school that 6 or 8 weeks later, and all the kids are good left and right. And that's the key. Left side of the brain, right side of the brain, left hand, right foot, left foot. And these kids are starting to get skills, the basic skills, and they learn that. And then the next thing is off they go. And when they get to middle school, high school, sometimes some of the kids, have gone into basketball, they've gone into soccer, they've gone into other sports, but their basic skills was in their aerobic capacity and their running skills.
So this marathon program, this is over the space of several days, right?
Well, it's actually over between 8 and 10 weeks.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's several days.
Yeah. It's actually interesting because I still do 26.2. And of course, here in New Zealand, it's 42.2, right?
Yeah.
And the kids are very excited because they get their 26.2 stickers. And they said, my father has to run 42.2, but we only have to do 26.2.
Rod, I just wanted to say I was a teacher for 3 years, sort of, Later I opened a running store with my brother and all that. But I felt the same thing. I was in an urban school in Everett, Massachusetts, asphalt yard, but I wanted to get them outside. And these were special ed kids, and they weren't, they were smart, but they were angry at the world, I wanted to get them outside. Isn't that the key?
Exactly. And it's interesting now in my day, my parents would be screaming at us to come inside at sunset. And now the parents are screaming their kids to get them outside.
Yeah. It's really kind of gone in negative with the phone.
Yes.
Phone's a great thing, but it's also a negative thing. And we got to have that understanding, I guess. I have two daughters. They're now 40 years old, 36 years old. So, but when they were younger, we didn't realize this couldn't always be a good thing, the phone. And it's, the kids, are kids as active today?
Yes.
I don't know if they are.
Well, there's more opportunities. Now we've got Sport Tasman and Sport Nelson, and that's government funded. And so all these programs are now introduced into the schools, and real coaches go into the schools. And so I'm finding now that we had last year was our biggest participation ever for the kids marathon, and we were averaging 25 to 35 kids per school. And now it's but you see, the thing is that I don't have the funding, so we when a school starts, we give the schools a hand up to support them with the medals, the booklets. We don't do t-shirts because it's, once again, you're doing the 120 schools just in one district. And so it's, but what we find is that the next year, the kids are so enthused, and the kids that have been running for the first year in that school have inspired all the other kids to go out and run with them. I actually started it where the kids was 7 years old to 10, and then the middle schools 11 and 12 years old. And I would go to the schools and I'd say, the kindergarten kids, the K through 5, right? Kindergarten kids, these are 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. They were out running with the other kids, and I go, "Oh, that wasn't meant to be." And they said, "We can't stop them. They're not going to go and play on the jungle gym if all the other kids are running around the field having fun." So now so that's why I say the younger kids, they will take 10 weeks, and the older kids, some kids can run a marathon in a couple of weeks, but they don't do that because we have the booklet. so that each week has a goal. And once you get your sticker and your stamp, you don't get a sticker and a stamp for doing more running. More is not better.
Yeah.
It's consistency. And I think, the kids get it now.